Welcome to knowledgeformen.com, where you're going to grow into the man you want to be. Your life will never be the same again. I can guarantee it. The father of personal development, Jim Rohn, said it best. You are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with. And so I've created a mastermind community called the Lion's Den around this idea that if you are surrounded by high-performing people and you have consistent education and training, then you will succeed in life and as a man. Check out kfmlion.com to learn how the Lion's Den can take your life, relationships, and business to the next level. Again, that's kfmlion.com. All right, guys, I'm here with Mike Campbell. He was the author of Unleash Your Alpha, a complete guide to eating like a man, training like a beast, operating like a gentleman, and becoming a legend. And although he is the author of this book, he's also a personal trainer and coach and is a self-proclaimed massive food and training geek. All right, well, Mike, happy to have you on the show here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
All right, let's now jump in, Mike, with a favorite success quote of yours or a favorite saying, something that you've lived by, and explain to the audience why you chose that.
I always have to think about these kind of things a little bit, but there's one that's really stuck for me in the last few years. To the best of my knowledge, it's an African proverb, and it goes by, I build the road and the road builds me. I don't know, it's one of those things that, for some people it might mean completely different things. It might mean nothing, it might be confusing, but for me, it really, I suppose, is one of those things that reminds me that I'm not perfect, no one's perfect, and in order to grow and improve and become a better man or better at anything, I need to start doing things, step out, start building the road, so to speak. And obviously, as I go, the process will build me and help me to improve. And I just need to continually have faith in myself and the process and keep working on improving myself, I suppose, because the process itself is what will help me to become better.
It's really in the journey, that the journey is what makes you a man. It's not the end goal of whatever it is that you're looking for. So yeah, I can resonate with that. And now, Mike, I'm interested in how you got started with this in, Unleash Your Alpha and becoming a coach and author and what really got you involved in this type of work. So yeah, share with us how you got started with what you do here.
Sure. So I suppose I'll point out for anyone who can't pick it up, I am a Kiwi. I'm from New Zealand, but I happen to live in Australia, and so I've had a little bit of time in different spots around the world, I suppose. But how I kind of essentially got into training initially was, I suppose it was one of those things of just being very active, playing a lot of sport, a lot of competitive rugby, and I went to university in New Zealand, and I kind of just didn't really know what I was going to do. I think I was one of those kids who knew I was going to go to university, but I didn't really have any specific ideas around what it would be that I would do. And I ended up taking a entry-level physical education paper, and I just was really interested in it. I found that the human body was fascinating. So I kind of went, all right, I'll do a physical education degree. And so I kind of went into that. But even still at the end of my degree, I kind of thought, well, what am I going to do? Like, most of my class either went on and became personal trainers, or they went and did some year at college and became a teacher. And I knew teaching kids wasn't really for me. So I thought, you know what, let's give this personal training thing a go. So it wasn't that I had set my mind onto and I wanted to, I was desperate to do and that kind of stuff. I thought, I've got the knowledge, why don't I give it a crack? But it was certainly one of those things that I pretty soon learned that, beyond knowing how to train myself and feeling better myself, I could really have an impact on other people and really help them make some pretty cool changes in their life. And I think that's quite common for a lot of trainers, that they may get into it for some slightly selfish reasons, which is fine. But as long as you, realize, I think, the impact you can have on other people, that's when the good trainers can, become a lot better. And that's kind of how it went for me. I spent a bit of time in New Zealand, and then I moved over to the UK, and I spent a few years over there, both playing rugby and training people and traveling and experiencing life. And that really set me up for, what it is that I want to do. And that is both, training and working with people, but also that time of travel and doing a lot of stuff really rammed home for me how much I do enjoy that stuff. I do enjoy getting out to different spots in the world and just experiencing the awesome things that this planet has to offer. And so when I moved back here to Australia, kind of settled in a little bit more, I suppose, is when I really started to delve into, who I am and I suppose what I'm best suited to do and what I have been doing. And I kind of realized that, first of all, I've got more in me. There's a message in me that that I want to spread and I want to share about kind of health and wellness and that kind of thing. And I kind of realized, you know what, I've always really dealt with a very similar audience to a large degree, and that's kind of young professional males. And not only that, I've realized that I've dealt with the same problems just time and time again with these guys. And you know, I mean, to a large degree in the Western world, it's pretty obvious. We're overweight to a large degree. You know, the amount of obesity and overweight guys is unreal. We're pretty unhappy, and I think that really comes down to a lack of confidence. There's a lot of guys, I hear this all the time. I'm lost. And you know, when you look at stats on depression and things like that, it's overwhelming. And then the other sad thing I think is that the fitness industry is absolutely drowning in egos and too much information, and it makes it impossible, nearly impossible for any regular guy to figure out what's best to do. So for me, I really want to simplify that information and help men not just get in great physical shape, but great shape in every area of their life. And that's kind of where I formed Unleash Your Alpha, my business, and what would also soon become my book. The tagline for my book and my business is eat like a man, train like a beast, operate like a gentleman, and become a legend. And for me, that's trying to really encompass all those elements that I'm talking about of not just getting in great shape physically, but in all areas of your life. And for me, that's what has really formed over the last few years, both with myself and my business, and obviously my book. And what I'm trying to do is really reclaim that word alpha away from that very misconstrued and kind of macho, arrogant connotation that it has these days to its original definition, which was simply a leader, someone who, you know, has equal parts heart and backbone, a leader who picks people up, not puts them down. And that's really what I think is missing in society to a large degree. And I want to try and help bring about a new change for men. And that's kind of where my head's at and where my energy and my focus is at the moment. Like I said, I wrote my book. I published it in April this year, and it's been going really well. Got that to #1 on Amazon for men's health, which is very cool. And it seems to float around there a fair bit. And right now, I suppose, being a trainer by trade historically, I suppose, I will always have a massive importance on that physical element of things. But what I think is the most important is really delving into, you know, what it is that makes a man and who he is and where his head's at. And those are the things, figuring out, you know, what are your core values and where's your life going and what are you passionate about. Those are the things that will help that physical stuff, even if it's just simple little superficial goals. That's the stuff that will help that really find its place in your life and on your list of priorities and actually have some impact so that stuff can be sustainable, long lasting, and have some real impact. But outside of that, I think we tend to not really land. And that's why for me now, the focus is really into that stuff. And I like to call it man skills, the finer points of being a man. And so that's kind of where my focus is these days, really helping men with that finer stuff of what's going on in their head and who they are as a person.
Yeah, and so you've kind of given us your story and shared with us kind of like your views on where men are today. But I want to go into like let's touch on your challenges that you've encountered on this journey and really like dive into those and how you've overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, there's a few, everyone's got their own challenges. And like I said earlier with that quote, right, for me, it's very much about steering challenges head on, not kind of turning away from them. And stepping into them. So certainly the idea initially of writing a book was a big challenge, totally a big challenge. And so, you know, I'm a big believer in getting outside your comfort zone, but also seeking accountability in the areas that you think you're going to need it, because it's really important to remember that most things, if we could do them ourselves, we would have done them ourselves already. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. And in fact, I think it's very strong. It's very courageous to figure out where you actually need help and go about seeking it. So when I decided to write a book, I made it incredibly public. I put it on Facebook and shared it with my email list and all that kind of stuff. And at that point, there was really no backing down. But of course, the whole thing was a huge challenge. And overall, it probably took me about 18 months. And there was periods where I was head first into it. There's periods where I left it alone for a couple of months because, you know, it just all kind of blurred together and I couldn't make sense of it. But in the end, I've had that public accountability, and that was something that I really needed to keep applying myself to make it happen. But at the same time, yes, I was definitely building certain parts of my business and working on many things in my business. So the challenge is to, without spreading myself thin and without getting distracted with other things, make sure that I could still run a functioning, strong coach and mentor and not be completely consumed, I suppose, with the writing and publishing of my book, because otherwise I wouldn't have put any money on the table, so to speak.
Huh. And you said it took 18 months to write the book. I'm wondering, what do you do to tap into that creative energy to write a book, to blog consistently, and to work full time as a personal trainer and do all the things you need to do to keep your business running, and then still find the time to have the energy to write a book?
Sure. So look, I'll tell you what. With the book, there was a very specific plan, and it's on. I've only got one. I've only got one thing to call on, so I can only really recommend this one. But what I did is myself and a friend and a few other people in a group I was involved with, my friend and I specifically, we set ourselves a challenge of 30,000 words in 30 days. So obviously the aim was 1,000 words a day. And this is where we very much used some accountability, as I was talking about earlier. So how that worked was, for him, his time was kind of first thing in the morning. Mine was always going to be later in the afternoon, but he would send me a text message, at sometime around 8 in the morning, and he'd already done his 1,000 words, saying, done my 1,000 words straight away. The motivation for me to make sure that I got my words written for that day. And of course, we're talking averages here, creativity and the words are flowing through me, then I'd get many more out and so on. But that little challenge and pact that we had with each other was absolutely perfect for getting the words down. Now, one of the things that I needed to make sure for me was that I didn't try and put any limitations on it. I didn't try and edit it as I went, because that is what would have really stifled my creativity. So what I did was I wrote everything, basically. I wrote everything down with the plan to then come back, and that's when the editing would take place. But I knew if I tried to edit and make things right, I suppose, first time around, the creativity really would have stopped. But in order for that process to happen, there really had to be a strong, I can't recall now, but it was probably a month maybe of pre-planning. So from the first concept idea to the central question around what my book was answering, to mind mapping out the whole thing, chapters, that stuff was crucial to then allow that 30-day process and beyond. To write the whole content did take longer than that 30 days, but that initial period was absolutely crucial to kind of call back and see, okay, what am I working on? Okay, yeah, and then I'm moving to that chapter, and those are the topics and so on. So that allowed the creativity to flow there. And that was a very specific process, I suppose, for the book. There's no reason why you couldn't do that again if I was going to go, right, let's write 20 blog posts in 30 days or something. But for the book, that worked brilliantly. Outside of that, when it comes to, from writing blog posts or articles for magazines and that kind of stuff, it depends. If I've got direction from an editor or something, then I'll go with that. But otherwise, myself, I believe strongly in writing the things down that come to your head. As much as I'd love to be able to say I have a pad and pen on me at all times, I don't. I have my iPhone, and I have a very busy and ever-growing notes section that, any ideas that I have, they go in there. And I come back every week always to look at that notes section and see what inspires me or what inspires some more thoughts, and go, yeah, right, I've got something there, let's write on that. So that's kind of how my process works, I suppose.
Yeah, so it sounds like a combination of having an accountability partner to help you just free flow write and just put all of your work out, and then just know that you can come back later and fix it, which is really good strategy. I use that for a lot of my programs as well. And so you've listed out some of the challenges that men encounter today. So I really want to focus on this for the rest of this episode. So what are some of the strategies that guys can do to gain more focus and direction in their life, and really start living that alpha lifestyle that you talked about earlier?
Sure. So one of the biggest things that I suppose stress and focus on, and it's one of the first things we work on as well, is, of course I'm going to get a client exercising and start working on the nutrition and all that kind of stuff. But for me, we have to delve into their mindset and kind of, I suppose the big question that comes up there, and that I think a lot of guys perhaps have never thought about, certainly a lot of guys struggle to answer, is who are you? Seems simple, but sometimes very tricky. And so that's what we want to find out. Who are you? What are you about? What is your life about? Where is your life going? And where do you want it to go? And like I said before, one of the more overwhelming, I suppose, pieces of feedback that I get from guys and new clients is that they're just a bit lost. They're not really sure. So I think without kind of drilling into that, nothing else is really going to land or kind of have anything worthwhile in it. So what we want to do is really delve into your core values. That's where that stuff starts. What are the things that you value most, both in yourself and in others and for your life? And once we get your values and the things that are most important to you, and obviously then the things that you must prioritize the most, the other things can flow from that. But what that will allow us to do is to build a really strong vision of what you want your life to be like. Because what that should be is that should see you living out your values. And if you can paint a really strong vision of you living out your values each and every day, then it really is a simple enough step of kind of reverse engineering the goals along the way, all the way down to daily and weekly short-term goals that will slowly see you achieving, that bigger kind of grander life that you want.
So it sounds like first identifying your values and then start working to live those values. Because I think that's the confusion there is, we can identify our values, but are we actually living those values? That's a whole nother ballgame.
100%, yeah. And I mean, of course, there's more to it, right? But again, that comes down to setting the goals that are going to get you there along the way. And one of the things with a lot of goals that some people don't realize is that we find it very easy to set an outcome goal. Like, oh, I want that, which is all well and good. But for the most part, and this is what I say to guys, of course, it's not always going to be true, but you must set behavioral goals around every outcome-oriented goal, because it is those behavioral goals, those daily actions that will make things happen. And without that, outcome goals and big, grander goals like a vision for your life just simply won't happen. And of course, that's going to be all sorts of things, from training X times per week and all that kind of stuff, all the way through to tasks and challenges around your mindset and around you as a man and that kind of stuff. So I'll give you a little example there of I suppose what I'm talking about. One of the challenges that I set my clients is, first of all, obviously one of the things we're going to do is get them to write about themselves and who they think they are. And they do that initially in the form of a letter to themselves. So I want them to write out everything that is in their head initially. What's going right in your life? What's not going so well? What are you happy about? What are you not so happy about? Just everything, anything and everything. There's no real set structure to it, because we just want to see what's in there. And then later on, we'll really pin into what are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your virtues, and how would you describe you to someone else? And from that, you're going to ask 3 people very close to you in different areas of your life what they think about you. I tell you what, that can give you some very interesting insight. But those kind of activities really allow us to get a good, strong picture of who you are, what you're good at, and what perhaps you need to work on. And they need to be brutally honest about your strengths and weaknesses. And what they think of you. And activities like that, obviously compared to your own, you can start to see if there's differences and changes that need to be made, are really, really powerful in helping figure out who you are and kind of what you may need to do and changes you may need to implement.
Yeah, and oftentimes, guys start the journey. They're doing the things that you've discussed, but let's take it, a step further. And then with time, guys can get taken off their path and start living, against their values and start doing things that don't make sense to what their values are. So, why do you think this happens to guys?
Sure. Well, I think, to be honest, I think for most men, it's not knowing them to start with, or perhaps not knowing what they mean to them in the bigger picture. And that would probably come back to, where we're wanting our life to go. If there's no real, kind of marriage of what your values are to why they are your values and what they mean to you and how they manifest in your daily life, or how you want them to manifest in your daily life, then, we're easily distracted, right? I mean, guys, we're pretty easily distracted a lot of the time. We don't have, really strong purpose and drive. And I should also point out that this isn't necessarily about being completely single-mindedly driven on one thing or the other. I believe it's incredibly important to have a good, strong balance of doing things that you really enjoy and that you find relaxing and all that kind of stuff. And potentially for different guys, that'll be part of their values and so on. But without having that real, I suppose, anchor and connection to what your values are, and again, what they will mean to you in the future and what you want them to mean to you, then we can get distracted pretty easily. And so you just got to keep coming back to that stuff and go, okay, well, what does this mean for me? What does that value mean for me? So, for example, for me, health is a pretty high value. And why is that? Well, because it allows me to do the things that I want. It allows me to live with energy. It allows me to, go and work out with my mates or go running around with my nieces and that kind of stuff. And that's why health is so important to me, because it means to do different things. So it's about figuring out why those things are important to you as well.
Yeah, I like that. And, that goes along with what you talked about earlier with being an alpha male who's really a leader with heart and backbone. Those are your words. And so can you elaborate on this more? I think it's really going to touch on this subject more.
Sure. So I think, and I kind of spoke about it earlier, there's that very negative, misconstrued kind of definition of alpha, unfortunately, these days, the kind of arrogant, almost narcissistic definition. And to me, that's something I like to call the anti-alpha. I think that is so far from what alpha historically meant that it's a shame. And potentially it was a risky business move for me taking that definition on. But that's just one side of the picture for me. That's one side of the anti-alpha, or backbone is what we'll call it. The other side is all heart. It's the guys that are, I suppose, very weak in spirit. They're really shy, really, really not confident in themselves. They very much live inside their comfort zone and won't kind of push themselves to anything grand at all. And, they just don't have the balls to step out, into the world and do things that are going to make them truly happy. And to a large degree, I think they can be ruled by their emotions, and they get caught up kind of thinking about all this stuff too much. And that would be, again, to one end of the spectrum, or heart. And so what I'm talking about is trying to get a good balance of those two together, heart and backbone. And I think it's really important for guys to figure out what their ego actually is, because a lot of the time it's ego. And what we generally tend to do is we place ego with that first guy, the big macho anti-alpha. But the other guy, the weak anti-alpha, his ego is preventing him too, because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to fail. He doesn't want to be seen to I suppose, often with those guys, it really is about failure. But his ego is playing up in that too. And so what we need to figure out is, well, how is my ego coming out day to day? And what do I need to do to prevent that happening? Because that is holding me back to a large degree. And then to a large degree with that side of it, it's about knowing your emotions but not being ruled by them. And I think that is really what that balance is about, again, when I talk about heart and backbone.
Yeah, and so is this the anti-alpha that you were talking about?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of goes both ways, both ends of the spectrum, or heart or backbone. Either way, that's the change that we need to see. We need to see that balance of those two coming together a lot more.
Yeah, I like that. And now, Mike, it's time that we enter the knowledge round. So are you ready for the knowledge round, Mike?
All right. Of course.
Do you feel stuck, alone, or like you're not getting the type of results you think you deserve? You put in all the hard work in your life, relationships, and business, but things just aren't getting any better? I've been there. That's how I started. That's where I was. I kept trying to improve my life, but nothing just seemed to give. I started to think that personal development was a joke. I felt like every month I was in the same place I was the previous month. But then I found something that just worked. I grew, my business grew, my relationships flourished, and everything around me just started to click. People started respecting me more, and I finally felt like I was becoming the man I wanted to be. I created a program to help guys get the same results in their life. Check out kfmline.com to learn how the Lion's Den can radically transform your life. Again, that's kfmline.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, Mike, the first question I have for you is, how would you explain what being an alpha male is to, let's say, like a younger 20-year-old guy or so?
The way I explain this is, it's about becoming the best man you can be. And it's really as simple as that. If you can work on becoming the best man you can be, then that will apply to every other aspect of your life. Being, a great brother, father, partner, mate, workmate, boss, employee, whatever it may be. It means that you have confidence in yourself, you know who you are, and you do what's right for you. However, you're compassionate and considerate towards others, and you lead by example.
All right. And Mike, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
I think I was just one of those guys who was a little bit too afraid to kind of put myself out there, for fear of failing or perhaps not being quite good enough, or whatever it was, I was just not really reaching my potential. And it was when I started to figure out, oh, well, yeah, okay, there's a bit more to me here. I can actually try some things, and oh, that wasn't that hard. Okay, let's try some more things. But it was really just a little bit afraid to step out of who in my head I thought I was. Because again, that's an important point to remember. We all have an opinion in our head of who we are. And that may be very different to what the world picks up. And that's an important distinction for guys to make.
Right, right. And Mike, have you had a mentor, somebody who's helped you on your journey? And have you guys ever shared a specific moment that was really impactful for both of you?
Sure. I mean, it would be remiss of me not to say my current girlfriend. And I say current girlfriend. She is someone who I am sharing my life with, and I love very much. And of course, there's been heaps of other people. My parents massively, and a bunch of mentors. But to be honest, Nadia, my girlfriend, she was the real catalyst that I suppose made me look within myself and really question who I was and what I was doing and where I wanted to go. And without that, I may have got there. I may have, but I can say for certain that she had such a strong part in that. And therefore has allowed me to become the man that I am today, I suppose, and hopefully I'm all the more better for it, and hopefully a lot of men are all the better for it because I know that I've helped a lot of guys, certainly in my coaching program, but also with my book.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of books, I know this will be tough, for anybody who's in the personal development space or who's a coach, let alone an author. Let's just go into, what are your three most influential books and why?
Good question. I always struggle. I always struggle with lists like that. So the latest one that I'm reading, no. Look, I'll tell you what. There's a guy that I've worked with, and this would come back to a mentor that I've worked with, called Dan Priestley or Daniel Priestley, and he's an Australian guy, but he happens to live in the UK, and he has a business called Intrevo, and his coaching course, I suppose, is called Become a Key Person of Influence, and it's a course that I did a few years ago now. But Dan was very instrumental to me, and I became friends with him, if he's ever in town, I will kind of move heaven and earth to catch up with him, kind of thing. And so one of his books, or two of his books, one is called Become a Person of Influence, but the coolest one I think I like is his second book called The Entrepreneur Revolution. And it's a big thing. It's one of his big things. He believes firmly that we're living in a time of entrepreneurial revolution. And I think for anyone who's kind of that way inclined and somewhat entrepreneurial minded, Dan has got some amazing thoughts around that kind of stuff. And he is a switched on guy, and he's and personally, I think his content is great. So The Entrepreneur Revolution by Daniel Priestley is a very cool and kind of influential book. And again, his other one is cool, but I would say grab one and kind of see how you go from there if you're that way inclined. I'll tell you what, because I'm in this space, it would be remiss of me probably not to add in something around this area. So a book actually, and I do hand it off to quite a few clients and stuff. It's called The New Manhood, by another Australian guy actually called Steve Biddulph, Biddolph, I think. Steve's got a very, very cool take on manhood, and he's written some really amazing books around that and around raising boys and raising girls as well, and that kind of stuff. But his book, The New Manhood, I think is just a really good assessment of masculinity, as well as some very good key take home points for guys and so on to have a look at themselves and their own lives and their relationships with themselves, potentially their sons, very much their fathers. And I think it's got some good actionable answers for things that you should kind of implement into your life. And obviously, because I'm in this realm and I'm educating myself and all this stuff, that was quite a strong book for me, both learning some things and then also reinforcing some of the things that I had kind of come up with myself, so to speak, to know that guys like him were also kind of talking about that and that kind of thing. So that was a book that I found very useful. And like I said, I do hand it out to quite a few clients as well. So it obviously must have had some impact on me. And then how could I not say my own book? Unleash Your Alpha. Eat like a man, train like a beast, operate like a gentleman, and become a legend. Look, for me, let me talk about my book very quickly. The biggest thing for me with that book was, how do I simplify this information for men and make it applicable? because that's what I believe is there's just way too much information, confusing and often conflicting information, certainly around health and fitness. So there's the question that I always came back to was how can I simplify this information and make it applicable for guys so it lasts. And for me, I hate to blow my own trumpet, but I struggle to find things like that that really simplify this information because we live in an age of marketing and social media and flashy things grab our attention. And that's what I believe is partly what is wrong with the fitness industry. There's so much of that. It's hard to find out, the genuine stuff from the snake oil. And again, that's why I spent so much energy and time making my book what it was, so it can be simple for guys to apply to their own lives.
All right. And if you guys want to pick up one of those books for free in audiobook format, you can do so if you go to kfmbook.com. Again, that's kfmbook.com, and you can pick up one of those books for free in audiobook format. All right. And fun scenario here for you, Mike. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
My 20-year-old self. So my 20-year-old self was a university drunkard, basically, who thought he was a professional athlete, but he really wasn't. So I played a high level of competitive rugby, and this is one of the parts of my story that I suppose I didn't mention. I was a very talented athlete, very talented rugby player. I used to play with internationals like All Blacks for my team and so on. But I suppose I just thought it would happen. I just thought, I'm talented, so it'll happen. But I did not realize the immense amount of work and drive that was needed to become a professional athlete. And so I would kind of say, if you actually want that, like, think about it, really think about it. If you actually want that, then find someone who can help you with this, because you're not going to figure it out yourself. You need a mentor that can drive home to you how much work you need to do, and then obviously what that specific work is. But it's not going to come easy. It's really not going to come easy, mate. But at the same time, don't necessarily put all your eggs in that basket. You're only 20 years old. It's a big wide world. Have a really strong think about what it is you really want to do. And, don't rush. It may take some time to figure that out. But when you find it, pour your heart and soul and energy into it.
All right. And what would you tell him not to do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try not to live with regrets and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I've done heaps of things wrong, and I've had heaps of things go different ways, and I've had, serious big relationships break up and all that kind of stuff. But all of that stuff, it sounds cheesy, right? But all of that stuff has made me who I am. So I couldn't really say don't do anything like that. I could say, if he was like, about training and nutrition, I could definitely tell him some stuff not to do there. But in terms of, things that I've done and say, hey, don't do that, I think that's probably hard, because like I said, it's all part of me, and I think I'm probably better for all those things to some degree.
Yeah, we all like to say that, of course, and it's common for guys to say that too. It is very true. Your biggest faults and failures and mistakes have, you've learned from them, you've fallen down, you got back up, and that's what's made you who you are. So, yeah, I really respect that. And now, just kind of reflecting back on your life, having been a personal trainer, written a successful best-selling book on Amazon, and being a coach for men, and you have this successful blog, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Good question. In general, I think know who you are, know who it is, I suppose, you want to be and where you want your life to be, and go about making that happen. But along the way, do not ever forget the bigger picture. Remember why you're here and what life is about. And for me, that is spending quality time with the people that I love and doing the things that I love to do. For other people, that will be different, but I think that's where some of that stuff can certainly apply to other people. But for me, it is about enjoying life as much as I can with the people that I love the most and the things that I love to do the most. And of course, that will only come from me doing what it is that makes me excited and makes me passionate and allows me to live a life that's full of rewards and challenges and kind of great moments.
Yeah, and through that process, becoming that legend.
That's it. And again, this is a little concept that I like to talk about. I remember picking this up from Jerry Seinfeld when he talks about when we're boys, when we're growing up, and we're talking and we're looking at Spider-Man, Batman, Superman. These aren't fantasies. These are options. And it actually really struck a chord with me because you know what? They are. When we're kids, we have this little thing in our head, yeah, man, I'm Batman, I'm Spider-Man. And it's that thing I think that really resonates with boys about creating something, creating a legacy. And then slowly as we go through high school and we come into our early 20s, brand gets beaten out of us. But it's about exactly that, becoming the legend and therefore creating a legacy.
Yeah, I really like that. And I feel like as adults, to be doing that, to be kind of like dreaming of wanting to be something, I feel like you don't want to just dream about doing something. Like you want to turn those dreams into tangible goals that you can start working towards. Like having a dream is it's great, right? It's like a vision for the future, but I feel like, as a child that's great, you're dreaming to be something.
Yeah.
But when you're an adult, like you got to start taking action, like turn those dreams into goals and start making things happen and start pushing towards that man that you want to be.
Yeah, well, you just gotta, and that's it, right? And again, for guys, this one thing that we're pretty bad at a lot of the time is that we don't act. We don't act on the things that we want to do, or perhaps the things that we need to do. And that's just what it takes. And again, it will bring me back to what I said earlier. I build the road, and the road builds me. And the only way that will happen is if I act. I consistently need to act. And again, be it your most grand dream or something even small day to day, you just got to act on it.
Yeah, I really like that. And so that's going to conclude the knowledge round there. So briefly, let's go into, what's exciting you today. Like what are things that you're working on right now?
Sure. So what I'm working on right now is essentially, I suppose, expanding on the stuff that I mentioned earlier that is really where my focus is on with my coaching and so on. And that's essentially the stuff that I've covered here today, but the mindset and the man skills stuff. So for me, that's the stuff that I think, really when we delve into what guys want and perhaps what they need and what they're not doing, it's that stuff. Like we all have superficial goals around our body and, wanting abs and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. I will never criticize someone for having those, but how you get those stuff, first of all, we need to know why you want that stuff. What is the drivers? The drivers for that stuff are the real deep down thing. That's around our fears and our biggest desires. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm delving into at the moment, and a little process that I like to call the chemistry of masculine attraction. And so I'm currently writing a presentation and a weekend workshop around that. And it's something that I can therefore, deliver to many guys at once as opposed to one-on-one, which is, not really the way forward for me in my business. But that's what's got me pumped at the moment. I'm doing a lot of time kind of flushing all that information out and researching it, and things like trust, and connections, and influence, and purpose, and all that kind of stuff, and obviously confidence and fear is a big part of that. But that's the stuff that's kind of got me going at the moment.
All right, Mike, looking forward to all the work and future projects that you got coming out. And so how can my audience follow up with you now?
Sure. So hopefully you've picked up by now the name of my business. So you can find me at unleashyouralpha.com. You can grab my book from unleashyouralphabook.com, or of course you can jump straight onto Amazon. Facebook, Unleash Your Alpha, and you can kind of find my social media handles and stuff from there. But I very much believe in helping guys out because a helping hand one day might be incredibly influential or important down the line. So I'm definitely happy for guys to contact me. I can't promise that I'll get back straight away, but I do lock out time every week to kind of answer emails and that kind of stuff. So if anyone feels like they want to ask me a question, then you'll find the contact on my website there. Feel free to shoot me through.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story here with my community. It's been an honor having you here.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. It was a pleasure.
All right, that's going to wrap up episode 117 with Mike Campbell with Unleash Your Alpha.